Hello again, and welcome to a financial thought leadership podcast, Banking on Experience, sponsored by CRMNEXT, the banking CRM, where we simplify work, drive growth, and deliver on experience. This podcast is meant to empower individuals working in the financial industry with stories, experiences, and knowledge straight from the source. Please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and stay tuned for an awesome show. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Banking on Experience. I'm your host, James Gilbert. Today, we are going to be talking about meeting the needs of members on their time and in their preference of choice. I am joined today by Seth Brickman, who is the CEO of QCash. He's a veteran of the United States Navy. He's from former Amazon and Microsoft, so he's been at the big players, but he's going to be bringing a whole different experience as it comes to credit unions today. So I'm super excited to have you on the show today, Seth. Welcome.
Thank you, James. It's great to be here.
So really quick, I always like to start the episodes off, as everybody knows, if you're a listener, with a quick icebreaker question. So Seth, tell us where your favorite vacation spot is.
My favorite vacation spot is actually, it's Belize because of the scuba diving. So I spent 11 years in the Navy. And during that time, I got to spend 2 lovely years on the island of Guam, where I fell in love with scuba diving. And so for me, it's always, where is the best scuba diving? And Belize is some of the best in the world.
So I've never been to Belize, but I believe that's the one that has like the huge hole or something in the ocean.
There are blue holes there. I'm not so even though I have the certification to go deep, I don't go deep because a good dive is always one where it's a round trip. You go down and you come back up. And so for me, the things that I want to see are typically less than 120 feet. So it's good.
Yeah, you're braver than I am. I am really afraid of the ocean. So I'm trying to get over that fear, but I'm still very afraid of it, as is my wife. So that doesn't help either because, we have that dynamic where if she doesn't like to go, I don't like to go. We just don't go. So
I think that makes it easier, not harder.
Yeah, that's very true. So Seth, let's start diving into the topic. First of all, I'd love for you to tell the audience, why are you so passionate about this topic, specifically as it relates to credit unions?
Absolutely. So one of the things that credit unions, their original mission was, and their current mission is, credit unions are there to help their members, right? Otherwise, they could just go to banks, but credit unions are different. They know their members. Their mission is different in helping their members. And one of the ways that I think we don't help members very well is helping them in what I consider, or what I call, a life event. And the thing about credit union members is they're having these life events, and a lot of these life events require the need for funds or capital. They need money. Their car breaks down, their refrigerator breaks, right? They have more month than money. They know they're going to be overdrafted in their account. Their kid breaks their leg. All of these different things require funds, and a lot of times these members don't have those funds. And the way a lot of credit unions work today is well, call us on Monday when the branch is open. Or, oh, I'm sorry, we closed at 5, but if you call us tomorrow morning, we'd be super happy to help you out. And then it requires interaction with loan personnel. It requires time and energy and effort. And that's one of the core reasons I got into the credit union industry, and QCash specifically, because we solve all of that for credit unions.
I just went through a very recent issue with our house, right? Where we were having flooding coming up from our foundation of our house. And our house has been built in the last 3 years. So it's considered still a new construction home, right? I mean, look, like we have a good savings set aside, but it wasn't for this. And we've been battling back and forth with our builder and a lawyer and all sorts of different things. And it's so interesting to me because you're 100% right. And I'll be the first to say it. As a consumer, there's not a lot of options out there for somebody like me. Like, I have the savings, but I don't necessarily want to dip into that. I feel like my builder needs to be somewhat responsible. I feel like our insurance can take care of some of it, but ultimately, like, we have a basement that can't even be used, and my son lives down there. So it's one of those things where it's like, man, a quick fix could be really great, right? I wish I could call my financial institution up, have a quick fix like this. And also on top of that, then make my builder and others go through the route of paying that off, right?
Sure.
Because I want a solution, a quick fix. And
well, and if you think about the Financial Health Network's latest study that says 40% of Americans cannot handle an unexpected $400 expense, right? It makes the need for the QCash platform even greater. There's that big of a need for it.
oh, I don't doubt that. And especially when it comes to underserved communities who are also needing these type of loans, I think that that's another area that you guys have been excelling in. So I'm excited about it. I'd love for you to talk about some of the gaps that credit unions you've seen from your experience that they might be coming up a little short in addressing this. Where do you think the biggest gaps are?
So I think there's a couple things there, right? Number one is a lot of the times credit unions don't recognize that their people are actually out there using third-party lenders that are not part of the credit union. And they're not even aware that their members are out there in the field using these lenders that don't have their best interest at heart and truly want to take advantage of them, right? We call that predatory lending. And it happens all the time. And so to think that, well, my members are different, that's not true. And we've got tools to help credit unions see that their members really aren't any different. Even if you're in a more affluent area, it just means you have a bigger paycheck and it means you have bigger expenses. But you're still most likely living paycheck to where that unexpected expense will hurt and you're going to need help. And so I think that's one area. And then I think the other area is really around innovation, right? One of the beauties of our product is we connect directly to the credit union's core, and a member can go from clicking a link on a website to funds in their account in under 60 seconds. And we don't require any interaction from loan origination personnel. So we can write the loan to the core, we write the GL entry, we write the auto payment schedules. And so that type of innovation is just new for the industry. And I think what we're starting to see, and I think the pandemic helped accelerate the realization that credit unions need to be more digital, that they need to be able to serve their members 24/7 through a digital platform so that they can make sure that they're getting the need or the fixes for their needs.
I'm curious, Seth, I want to kind of bring back some of your previous experience. Coming from Amazon and Microsoft, who are two huge players when it comes to just customer experience, when it comes to communicating to their customers, what has been your biggest eye-opening moment coming from the worlds that existed there to the credit union world?
Well, I would say that the number one, and we call them leadership principles at Amazon, the number one leadership principle at Amazon is customer obsession. And it's really not just lip service. They truly believe it, and it's in everything that we do every single day. And the idea of thinking about it from the customer's perspective and are we actually providing the right customer experience is just key, and it's native to what we do every single day. And I think as I bring that into the credit union industry, I don't necessarily see that. I've been on a lot of websites. I've been in a lot of apps where I go, ooh, this experience is a little wonky, or it's rough, or it's buggy, or the user experience, it's not intuitive and it's hard to figure it out. And what you realize is just that there sometimes can be, and not obviously industry-wide, but there is this different definition of good than what you would find naturally in like an Amazon, where good would never be good enough. It's either great and good for the consumer, or it's not going to happen, right? As opposed to, well, they can figure it out. It's kind of, they might have to make one extra click, but they're going to get there. Where we would say, well, then let's figure out how to take away that extra click. I think that's one of the other unique things.
I spent some time in the customer experience space, like the actual space. That's why I'm saying customer, by the way. And it was very interesting to see how far along people are in their journey when it comes to mastering this experience idea. Amazon is like the holy grail. Like, you're competing with Amazon now. People's minds, they've made a transformation. Amazon has set a precedence of experience to where it's not just a need or a nice to have, it is an expectation. And people expect immediate results. They expect to be served correctly. They expect no hassle returns and refunds, like those kinds of things, right? They expect those things. What do you think credit unions can do today to help solve some of this high need of expectation, very little interjection with even humans at times, but when there is a need for a human, you better make sure that they're ready to talk when they're ready.
Right. Yeah, so I think there's a couple things, right? Number one, there's actually getting feedback from your members or customers, but members that are using your platform, right? I know I went to test one of the credit unions, and I won't say which one. I went to test their account creation because I wanted to open up a new account. And it literally took me a week to use their online platform to open an account because I did something online. Then it required somebody at corporate to do something. Then they had to email me back. Then I had to go back online, do something else. Then they had to do something else. And then I finally got the account. And when I got the account, I actually didn't even know my account was opened until I got a statement in the mail saying that there was cash in my account. And so it's those types of interactions where, that's one of the things that Amazon was really good at. We call it VOC, or voice of the customer. And it's important that we in the credit union industry are consistently listening to the voice of the customer. We're bringing them in for focus groups. We're doing moderated sessions with them. We're actually doing user testing with them before we launch something, not after it's launched, so that we launch what's correct first, as opposed to having to go back and fix it. And I think that's really key is that voice of the customer piece. And my job as CEO, my job is to listen to members and to listen to credit unions. If I do those two things well, I should be able to lead this company relatively well because I'll know exactly what needs to get done. And then I think the other kind of piece of it is really bringing in experts who know what they're doing, as opposed to people who can figure out how to do it. And that's one of the things that I've really changed at QCash when I joined. And I started looking at some of the third-party providers we were contracting with. They weren't bad people and they were great companies, but the work that we were asking them to do, they would have to go figure out how to do it. A great example is one of my dev partners. We asked them to do some work and then we paid them to go read documentation on how to do it so that they could then turn around and figure out how to do it. The flip side is I can go find a contractor or a vendor who's done it and is an expert at it, which is what we did, Microsoft Gold certified partner. And they did it in half the time, no issues, and it actually ended up being less expensive, even though they are more expensive per hour. It was less expensive and we got better quality. And so that's true when it comes to user experience as well. Not a lot of credit unions have a user experience manager or director who's responsible for everything that's customer facing to make sure that what their member is seeing is truly the best, the easiest, and it's intuitive. It's a valuable position to have.
You bring up a great point. One of the things that I wanted to add on to what you said is, as it relates to listening to customers and the voice of the customer. And by the way, Seth and I are saying customer, we are well aware it's a member. We know that, just so everyone is aware. But I want to make sure that we call out one thing. It is so important to track that VOC or VOM if you're referring to a member, but it's even more important to have things that you can act on, right? So I think that the other layer to this is structuring how you're listening to your current customers and your current members, but also allowing your team an opportunity to act on what you're hearing for insights, right? That's one of the key missing pieces that I've always felt like is tough for organizations to figure out, because it's one thing to listen, it's a whole nother thing to put it to action. And I think too oftentimes they might be listening, but they are assuming, trying to get ahead of the listening, right? And they're assuming of something that's going to be a solution rather than allowing what they're hearing to actually become something that they act on.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's one of the unique pieces of the QCash story. I don't know if you've ever heard our history, but the way we even became a product was a teller at a Washington State Employee Credit Union branch was noticing that non-members of the credit union were coming in and cashing members' checks. Now, this is back in 2005. And so she escalated it to say, I don't understand why all these people are coming in that aren't members of our credit union and they're cashing our credit union members' checks. And when they did that digging into, that's when they realized, hey, our members are going outside of our credit union to get loans, which means we're not actually helping them the way we should. Let's build something that brings them back into the credit union and maintains their credit union as their primary financial institution. And that's how we were born. A teller who asked a question because she was watching and listening to the customers.
So I want to talk a little bit about the second piece of our topic, just for a second. And that's the place of preference that people prefer to be communicated with. Give us your rundown on why this is important and some examples of what you think credit unions could do today.
I think you have to create the availability for members to choose how they want to be communicated to. So that preference capability is really important. Not everybody wants to be communicated to the same, nor do they want to be communicated to at the same frequency. One of the things that you can learn as you watch the way people are interacting with your messages. So this is from a previous company that I worked at, but what we noticed is there was a distinct difference in the time somebody opened one of our emails based on their age demographic. And so one of the learnings from that was we needed to change the times we were sending emails to certain demographics. And we had much higher open rates when we sent them during the window in which they would naturally open an email. And so just some unique things there, but also with today's technology, I have my phone on me. My phone acts as my primary screen, not my PC. And so that's, if people want to communicate with me, that's actually how I prefer they communicate with me, because when I'm in a meeting or a podcast or something like this, they can still communicate with me, where if they're trying to use my computer, they're not going to do so well. And so it's understanding how your members want to receive that communication, and whether they want an SMS message, whether they want to be via email. But also there are still people, and I'll even admit my wife is one of them, she likes that personal interaction. She likes to actually go into the credit and talk to the teller and do her transaction. If I can't do it through my phone, I'm probably not going to do it. But that's the way she likes it. And so we have to recognize too, and it's to a point you brought up earlier, there are people that still want to talk to a real person, that want to interact with a real person and want to feel known. And that's really what it comes down to, is how do we as the credit union industry know our members? One of the ways we know them is by communicating with them in the way they want to be communicated with.
Two things come to mind when you mentioned that. First one is the pandemic. Obviously, because of that, it shifted people that were going into the credit union to a lot of what credit unions were trying to solve for was video banking, right? Now it's interesting because there's this, I think, debate right now going on. I don't think it's gone away. And it's this like, well, should we have this channel of video banking, and should we focus efforts and time with it? Well, I think Seth just answered that question. If there's people that are going to do it and they're worried about coming into the branch, you should do it.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I think it's interesting because one of the biggest pieces of feedback that I hear from credit union members who have used the QCash product is that they love the idea that they didn't have to look a teller in the eye and say, I need help, right? That's tough to do, to say, I need financial help. But the fact that they could do it through the app and not have to interact, that gave them such a strong feeling towards their credit union, and that their credit union was actually helping them and communicating with them without communicating with them, right? It was great.
I mean, we've kind of been talking about this a little bit, but I wanted to talk about technology and kind of this omni-channel approach. We've been kind of touching on it a little bit, but I think it's so important. Let's expand this a little bit.
Okay.
Outside QCash, I mean, there's some areas that obviously CRMNEXT helps with this, right? And I'm very curious to know your thoughts about how a credit union, let's say, for example, that their primary means of communication is through the contact center and it's phone, branch, maybe email. How can a credit union now start branching into some of those other channels that are becoming more important for people, like tech, maybe even video banking, like we mentioned?
Sure.
What do you think are some initial steps that they can take?
So I think number one would be do a little bit of user research and make sure that you have at least a critical amount of people that want to use that as a service, right? Every part of the country is going to be a little bit different, but some of the easiest ways to do things are, if you have a mobile app, the ability to add SMS messaging, or some people call it push messaging, is super easy, right? The same thing with text messaging. If you have any sort of digital experience, there are so many third-party providers that can add that feature at a very low cost to you. And the reality is, especially at a contact center where members are constantly on the phone, the ability for you to use text help actually changes your contact center representative from a one-on-one to typically a one-on-5. And so your cost per member for that contact center goes down dramatically and more than pays for the technology of the text solution in helping your members. And so I think those are a couple easy ways. Video banking is always going to be a little bit challenging. Even in this pandemic, the medical industry has found medical appointments via video to be challenging. And that's because, especially with video, well, how do I make a deposit on a video call? Do I have to show the camera the front and the back of the check? And then somehow the teller on the other side is going to go back to another screen and rewatch the video to capture those numbers. Like it's going to be a little bit awkward, but can it be figured out? Absolutely. But it's going to be a hybrid technology, right? It's going to be use your phone, snap some pictures through the app, which automatically uploads it to the teller while you're talking to them, or even a document, right? And it allows you to have this conversation via hybrid technology of using an app to actually transmit documents and things like that, but talking to a real person on how to handle or get through those types of things. And then I think the other piece is actually making sure your contact center representatives know what your members are looking at. So your contact center representatives should know what your website screens look like, should know exactly what's on each one, what each CTA or call to action button does, right? Or what each form field does, because that's the other area where members struggle. Is some of us have decided that we like to inactivate a call to action button until every part of the form is filled out. And so when you fill out the entire form and that button still doesn't activate at the bottom, you as the consumer are scratching your head going, okay, what didn't I do? Everything's in there. And if you're like me, you realize the one thing you did was you let it auto-populate, which adds an extra space onto the end of everything. And the form field was seeing that extra space and saying you're improper or invalid filling out the form. Then you got to go in and delete all those extra spaces and the CTA button comes up. Communicate to them with error states instead. Tell them in red, hey, your email address is invalid. And I'm going to look at it and go, no, it's valid. I'm going to put my cursor there, see the extra space and go, oh, there's an extra space there. So again, that's another form of communication. It's not just helping the members know what they should do. It's helping them know when they haven't done what they should do and making it clear to them. And I think we focus a lot of our efforts on happy path, which is just going through and doing everything right, as opposed to the unhappy path, which is how many different ways can a member not do this right, and how can we make sure they understand what they did wrong? So that's another form of communication that's really helpful.
Great examples. I do think it's very fascinating too, because you did bring up the mobile app and the push communications there and notifications there. I do think that's a big missing piece, right? It's tying that to the contact center communications that also can happen. To your point, there are tons of vendors that do it really, really well. And I think that also you have to be able to share the information that a member has already given you and said, hey, this is my preference. Ask that question. It's so fascinating to me how many people don't ask the question, like, how do you like to be communicated with? That's such a simple thing. Just
right?
Ask them. I guarantee you're going to get an array of different responses, and you've got to be able to tackle each one of those. It's
rare that somebody doesn't have a preference, right? It's not like when you ask a friend, hey, what do you want to eat for lunch? And they go, oh, whatever you want. Nobody's going to say that when you go, how should I communicate with you?
You're exactly right. It's why we created a screen pop in our product, because of the fact we needed the contact center to be able to communicate omnichannel. Imagine that. Through all different channels. Like, that's the whole purpose. Is, I think that there's an area within our product where we show preferences, and they want to either be communicated via SMS or phone or email or video, right? And I think we always have to have that on our screen, being able to see it all the time. When you're talking to a member, how do they want to be communicated and in what ways? And by the way, preferences go as far to say, do you want to be communicated in the early mornings, the afternoons, or the evenings?
Sure.
If you're me, only hit me in the evenings because I'm not working, and it's going to be less of a distraction for me. So,
Right.
and I'm sure everyone else is the same way. I think it all boils down, Seth, to one thing. Put yourself in their shoes.
Yeah. Customer obsession.
If you were them, how would you want it to be done for you? We have a rule in on my marketing team here at CRMNEXT where we can't do anything unless we see it through three lenses: the one who buys, the one who sells, and the one who keeps the customer happy.
It's a great rule.
And that is, to me, what it's about from a marketing perspective, because we have multiple customers. We don't just have the one who buys, but we have the one who sells the product. We have the one who keeps the customer happy and needs information and content. So that's my customer, right? I've got to look back through three lenses. All we're asking credit unions to do is look through one lens.
That's right.
Be in their shoes, look through their lens, and everything else gets a lot easier. Decisions shouldn't be complicated.
Right. Well, and like you switching from a big bank to a credit union, the number one thing facing credit unions today is customer acquisition. Create a reason for customers to come join your credit union.
I couldn't agree more. So this has been great, Seth. Where can the audience reach you and learn more about QCash?
Absolutely. So the easiest way is to go to our website, which is qcashfinancial.com. And there we've got a web form you can fill out that can either get you in contact with my sales team, my client success team, or even myself. And so that's probably the easiest way. Or feel free to just email me at sbrickman@qcashfinancial.com. And I will respond. I will admit I get a lot of emails every day, but I do respond to every single one typically within 48 hours. So I'd be happy to chat with you directly, but anything we can do to help a credit union help their members, like that's what we're about. So reach out to me.
I can attest to this. Seth and their team are all about the credit union movement, and I personally greatly respect that and admire that about them. So I can attest to their team being all about that. And if you haven't heard of Denise Weimar, she's on Seth's team, and she can attest to it as well. So Seth, thank you so much for joining the show today. It has been an absolute pleasure. And if you have not yet subscribed to the podcast, please do so. Let me know what you think. If you have a topic that you want to hear that you haven't heard about, reach out to me via LinkedIn. Say, hey, James, we think you should talk about this. I really do want to hear from you, so let it happen.